workshop, Carol Gibbs. And then we have George Zapalak, who is, I have to get your official title, he is the Assistant Director.
No, Division Manager.
Sorry, Division Manager. Wrong George. He's George Z, and now we go to A. George A to Z, Z to A. George Adams, and he's the Division Manager.
Assistant Director.
Sorry, Assistant Director. Oh gosh.
It's all on your agenda correctly.
Yes. I'm sorry. And then we have Matt Dugan, who is going to do a presentation, and he's the Development Services Process Coordinator. And Derek Nicholas, who is in the back with the camera, he's the Public Information Specialist. So there you have it, the list of special people in the room besides you. And now I'll hand it over to Carol Gibbs.
Thank you, Mary. I'm glad to see everybody here. It's not quite the turnout that we had hoped for, but I have a feeling some people are stuck in traffic, so maybe they will straggle in. Did everybody get a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Hopefully. Okay, we're going to try our hardest to stick with it in terms of the timeline, especially up to the question and answers part, because we're anticipating that's going to be lengthy, either the volume of questions or the length thereof, or the length of the answers, or whatever. So we're hoping we're going to have a really good dialogue. But as you see by the agenda, that's after we wake you up with goodies, snacks. Everybody also should have gotten a half sheet of paper, green, that if you don't have one, Mary can get you one in the back. If you need more than one, I assume that's okay too. But please use that to compose your thoughts as the gentlemen are doing their various presentations. If something one of them says triggers a thought that you have about something you've been wondering about, or worried about, or concerned about, or whatever, write it down, because we're not going to take questions during the presentations. We want to get through them, because the first one is kind of about how it works now, and the second one's going to be about how it's, the changing, the process is going to work, and some questions may be answered after you were to ask the question. So let's hold them all till the end. When you do ask questions, please be as succinct as possible. I am not City Council. I am not Planning Commission. I am not giving you 3 minutes. So please ask or state whatever it is you have to say in a manner that is succinct. And that's the reason for asking that you write it down and kind of put your thoughts together before you stand up to speak. When we start the question and answer part, and I'll remind you about this, Brian's going to have the other microphone, and he's going to come to you when I call on you or point to you. So give him a second to get to you. We're going to basically try to kind of alternate left side of the room, right side of the room, and we'll have to figure out if you're left or my left. So give him time to get to you, because in addition to having these tablets where somebody from ANC is going to be scribing, capturing at least the questions, we also are videotaping it, so we want to capture everything, so that if we do need to clarify or expound on something that was said, we've got the video as a reminder of the details. Acronyms. I am probably going to interrupt you, if you say acronyms that I suspect not everybody in the room knows. I think we can stick with ANC, and I think we can probably use LDC. But beyond that, let's try to remember that not everybody lives and breathes this alphabet soup every day. Also, if you start talking too long, like I'm about to do, I'm going to give you a hopefully subtle wrap it up. And you may see other committee people, Brian or Mary or Joyce, kind of trying to help expedite things too. And again, we're not trying to control what is said or asked, but we are trying to just keep things moving. And again, having written down your questions ahead of time will help us all keep ourselves on track. As you'll see on the agenda, not only is the contact information for all of the city staff here on your agenda, but also the website where the new LDC information is housed, both the stuff pertaining to the Land Development Code Advisory Group, meetings, agendas, minutes, presentations that were presented there, and my understanding is that these presentations will be posted out there. If not already, they will be very shortly. So, and this, for the sake of ecology, ANC chose not to print them all, have them all printed and handed out. So, hope you understand that bias toward electronics. Certainly, if you need a printed copy, you can contact me. I'm at the bottom of the page, and I'll be happy to mail you printed copies if the electronic method doesn't work for you. And then finally, I just want to make the point that I think most of you understand that this is not the actual formal listening session of the LDC rewrite process. That will begin next month, and I think Derek is going to speak to that at some point. I was just reminded of another point I forgot to put on my notes here, and that is please turn all cell phones to vibrate or turn them off. Let's see, I think that's about it. ANC committee, did I leave anything out? Anything else I need to say at this point? I'm not even seeing a couple of the committee members. Oh, there's one. So we're good? Okay, so what we're going to have first is George Zapalak, the division manager for the Land Development Code rewrite. Talk for about 15 minutes, and followed by Matt Dugan and then Derek Nicholas about this rewrite process and timeline and what to expect. Are y'all ready to roll? All right, so George, if you want to grab that mic right beside you, I'm not sure it's turned on yet, but there's a on-off button. There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak to you this evening. And I'm going to talk about the land development process primarily.
Away from that speaker a little bit.
That speaker.
Okay.
Screech in your ear.
Is that better? Okay. So I'm going to talk about the land development process as it exists today and summarize what some of the basic requirements and contents of the Land Development Code itself. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the regulatory framework in which the code exists. Under the city charter, the city is supposed to have a comprehensive plan that sets forth our vision for how we want to grow and develop in the future. And that's the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted by City Council last year, as you know. And then various elements of that code are adopted from time to time, including transportation plan, watershed plans, and neighborhood plans. They're all components of the comprehensive plan. And by charter, the Land Development Code is supposed to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and any amendments to the comprehensive plan. So one of the roles of the Land Development Code is to enforce or implement the vision that is spelled out in the Imagine Austin plan and in the various neighborhood plans. The Land Development Code basically sets forth rules for building and using land in Austin. It describes and regulates what you can build, where you can build it, how much you can build, how it can be used, when it can be used. It's very important because it shapes not only the way we live today, but the way we live into the future. The buildings we build today are going to be around for a long time, and so our children and grandchildren are going to be shaped by the rules we have today. The basic contents of the code, there are a number of technical areas that are spelled out. There are regulations that govern a number of technical areas, things that we as a community have decided we want to regulate, such as land use, transportation, drainage, the environment, water and wastewater, signs, buildings. And then there are a number of processes that are also spelled out in the code for how a person obtains approval of an application to build or develop on a piece of property. And I'm going to go through those various processes and touch a little bit on the technical requirements, although I'm not going to get into any detail on them tonight. The process, as spelled out in the code, has 5 major steps that are listed here: zoning, subdivision, site plan, building permit, and inspection. Not every application or not every project necessarily has to go through all these steps. Some of them may have been done at an earlier time. But if any approvals are needed, they have to be done in the order listed here. Zoning first, then subdivision, site plan, building permit, and finally inspection. Zoning is the one that most people are probably most familiar with. It's the one that we all get involved in on Thursday afternoons at City Council. Zoning regulates the use of land, particularly, but also the development standards under which the land can be developed. It regulates things such as the lot size, the building size, the height, the setbacks, how close you can build to an adjacent property, how much building coverage, how much of the land you can cover with buildings or other impervious coverage such as parking lots or driveways. It also sets forth landscaping standards, and it has design standards, subchapter E and subchapter F, which regulate the appearance and the location of buildings on a piece of property. Zoning is the most visible and the most public process that we have. Every zoning case has to be approved by City Council after it receives a recommendation from the Land Use Commission. And the Land Use Commission is the term that's used in the City Code to describe both the Planning Commission and the Zoning and Platting Commission. Both commissions basically have the same function. They both are involved in the zoning process. The Planning Commission is in charge of projects that are in areas that have neighborhood plans or that are developing neighborhood plans. And the Zoning and Planning Commission has jurisdiction over the rest of the geographic area. So essentially, the Planning Commission has more of the inner city areas where the neighborhood plans have been done or are in process, and the Zoning and Planning Commission has more of the fringe, perimeter, and the areas right outside the city limits. Every zoning case has to have a public hearing, and citizens have an opportunity to speak. It's also a very discretionary process. City Council has a lot of latitude in deciding what type of zoning they want to allow on a piece of property. The main requirement is they cannot deprive a property owner of some reasonable use of the property. But they do have a lot of discretion in terms of how much intensity and what uses they want to allow on a piece of property. I should back up just a second and mention here that you see here on the chair in front of you 4 volumes, which is the entire city code. It governs everything from barking dogs to aviation and everything else. There are 4 volumes, and the 3rd volume, Volume 3, is the Land Development Code, as well as some parts of Volume 4. But that shows you just what an important and what a major part of the city code is composed of the Land Development Code. So the next step after zoning is the subdivision process, and this is the division of a tract of land into parcels for the purpose of sale, development, or extension of utilities to the property. A subdivision can be as small as 1 lot, or it can be a large development with hundreds of lots and dozens of blocks and a lot of new streets and drainage and utility features. The subdivision process is very important because it establishes where the streets and lots are going to be in the future. And once that's established, it tends to be fairly permanent. It's very hard to go back and make changes afterwards. Subdivision approval is by the Land Use Commission primarily. The Director of Planning and Development Review does have authority to approve certain small plats that are 4 lots or less, as long as they're new subdivisions. If it's a re-subdivision of something that was previously subdivided, that has to go back to the Commission. But if it's a new subdivision of 4 lots or less, that can be approved by the Director. It doesn't require a public hearing, doesn't require notification of the neighbors. It's an administrative process. Subdivisions are generally not discretionary. There are a set of rules that are set forth in the code, and if a subdivision complies with those rules, then the Land Use Commission doesn't have a lot of discretion. They are, by state law, they have to approve the subdivision. The exception there is if someone wants to do something that is a variance or a deviation from what is in the rules, they may have to go before the Land Use Commission to get an exception or variance, and that does involve a public hearing and notification of all the property owners. Once a subdivision is approved, it is recorded in the county deed records, and it becomes rather difficult to modify after that. Generally, all the owners of all the lots within the subdivision would have to agree to changes that are made after that time. In our ETJ, or extraterritorial jurisdiction, it's the area that is 5 miles beyond the city limits. The city has a more limited jurisdiction. We do have subdivision authority, but we don't have zoning controls. So we can't regulate the use of the property, but we can regulate how the property is cut up into lots and blocks and how new streets are platted. In Travis County, we have an overlapping jurisdiction with the county. We have a single set of subdivision regulations, which are called Title 30, and they're another portion of the city code. And subdivisions in ETJ have to be approved by both the Land Use Commission, the city's Land Use Commission, and the Travis County Commissioners Court. Next step in the process is the site plan process. Now, if you have a single family or duplex development, you can skip this step. But if you're a commercial, multifamily, industrial development, you have to go through the site plan process. And this is a very detailed engineered plan is prepared showing what's going to be constructed on the site. It indicates the building size and location, parking and driveways, landscaping, tree protection, utilities, grading, drainage, and water quality plans. And a typical site plan is multiple sheets, 20 to 30 for an average size project. It could be hundreds for a large project. So this is where we really get down to the nuts and bolts. And once a site plan is approved, then that's the point at which some construction can start to take place on the property. Most site plans are approved administratively. They're approved by staff, and like subdivisions, they're not discretionary. If an applicant complies with all the rules that are set forth, then the staff has to approve it, whether we think it's a good project or not. If it meets the rules, it has to be approved. There are a few site plans use commission approval. And these are called conditional use permits, and those that are along hill country roadways. Conditional use permits, in every zoning district, there are certain uses that are allowed, that are permitted, and there are other uses that are called conditional. And that means they may be approved, but they have to be reviewed by the Land Use Commission, and the Commission may add additional conditions to mitigate any adverse impacts they may see from those projects. So those are more discretionary, but the discretion is somewhat limited. The Commission can address certain factors that are spelled out in the code, and they do have some discretion over that, but they don't have absolute discretion. So the next step then is the building permit process, and at this stage architectural plans of the buildings are prepared, and an application is evaluated for compliance with technical codes. And these are things like building codes, mechanical codes, electrical, plumbing, fire, energy, very, very detailed things at the building level. Building permits are approved administratively, and again, they're non-discretionary. If someone complies with the building code, then staff is obligated to approve it. Next step after that, at that point, once someone has a building permit, they can proceed to construct buildings on the property. And they have to go through a series of inspections as they're under construction to make sure that the work is being done in accordance with the approved plans. In Austin, we have several different types of inspections that take place, environmental inspections. Inspectors make sure that the site is being prepared properly and that runoff is being handled so that we don't have silt flowing into the waterways. Subdivision inspections look at improvements within the right-of-way, such as new streets. Building inspections deal with the actual structure itself. And then finally, if all inspections are passed, a person obtains a certificate of occupancy, and that means they can move in and occupy the building. The Planning and Development Review Department is the core of the process. We're the hub, and we coordinate the entire development process, but we don't do it all ourselves. We do have a lot of the major reviewers in our own department, but there are many other city departments, Austin Energy, Austin Water, neighborhood housing, real estate, and so on, that are involved in the process as well. We try to take everyone's issues into account during the process so that we can ensure that it's in compliance with city regulations. So my last slide here is just to kind of transition to the next part of the presentation. What I've spelled out sounds like it's very organized, and even though there may be a lot of steps, it sounds like, okay, there's a logical order to what you do. Well, in reality, it's not quite that simple. The regulations that may apply to a piece of property are scattered throughout the code, and some of them are not even in the code. They're in other documents. And so just as an example, if you want to know what the maximum height you can build on a piece of property is, these are the things you would have to check to make sure that you have the right answer. And hopefully you've not missed any of them. The first one is just to check the base zoning district. Every property has a zoning district assigned to it. If you look at the code, it will show you that in a GR zoning district you can build to 60 feet. However, you also have to look at the ordinance that council passed when they rezoned the property and see if they put additional conditions on it. They might have reduced the height somewhat. There are also a number of overlay districts, such as the waterfront overlay district along the Lady Bird Lake here. If you're within that district, you may have a different height limit. If you have a planned development area, which is another type of zoning district, you may actually be able to build more height than you normally would in that district. If you have a restrictive covenant on the property that City Council imposed on it at some time in the past, you may not be able to build the same height. If you're in a combining district, such as around the Capitol, we have what's called a Capital Dominance Zone combining district. You can't build to the same height. If you're in a neighborhood planning area, staff has to go pull the zoning ordinance that codified that neighborhood plan, and that may cover hundreds of properties, and we have to kind of flip through the pages and find out, okay, is this property within that neighborhood plan, and does it have any limitations? If you're a property, if you're near a single family or duplex residential development, you may trigger compatibility standards, which also affect the height of the structure you can build. If you're on a hill country roadway corridor, there are different height limits depending on how close you are to the roadway and what sort of sub-district you're located in. And then finally, if you're subject to the commercial and residential design standards, you may have other restrictions on height. So this just kind of gives you these are just 10 items you have to go through just to find that one question: what is the allowable height on my property? So At that, I'm going to transition over to Matt Dugan, who's going to talk a little bit about the code revision process and how we're going to go about trying to improve our process in the future.
Okay, hi. I'm Matt Dugan. I've been at the city's planning department about 3 years. Thanks y'all for coming out. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces. I'll talk to you all a little bit about the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan and then the process that we're going to go through to revise the Land Development Code. This presentation is pretty similar to one that we gave to council last November. Basically, we've got Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan by charter. The comprehensive plan, it contains the city's policies for growth, development, and beautification. What kind of it means is it contains our values. It's how we manage our change. It should be used for decision making. Provides direction for more detailed plans and investments. And then it's also really our to-do list for the city. And then it contains metrics and indicators that we use to track the progress of the plan. And this fall we'll have our first annual report that will come out that will kind of show what kind of progress we've made on the on implementing the comp plan. So in the plan, there's actually 8 priority programs. We went through the whole process to create a plan, vision, policies, actions, and then priority programs. When we came out of the working group process a couple summers ago, we had 238 individual action items. That's a lot to manage. So when we took a closer look at them, they kind of fell into these 8 big buckets. And then we call these the priority programs. Each one of these priority programs has a cross-functional, cross-departmental team that's responsible for implementing that specific priority program. So during the process to create Imagine Austin, kind of planning development review department was kind of in charge of putting the whole thing together and shepherding it. Now that we've got an adopted plan, implementation's kind of, the focus is kind of shifted to the different departments to actually implement the plan. But each one of these priority programs has a liaison in the planning and development review department. The development regulations, that's the one we're talking about right now. That is in the planning and development review department. We've kind of got city department team to work on this. There's about 26 people in PDR, Planning and Development Review Department, that are going to work on this. And then in the city departments, there's about 45 different people from the different departments that are going to help out on in revising the Land Development Code. When we got towards the end of Imagine Austin, we asked our consultants, okay, we've got a plan. How are we going to implement this? How do other communities implement comp plans? So they went around and did a little research and found some stuff out. Found out kind of there's 5 kind of different levels of implementation of a comp plan. Kind of the first one is community engagement. This runs throughout the entire process. The process to create the plan, the process to get the plan adopted, and the process to actually implement the plan. Next one's internal alignment. Found that this was kind of rare among different cities. They don't really do this. You get a plan and it goes on the shelf, but you don't really change your organization to implement it. So we are going about doing this internal alignment. Regulations are the next one. You want to make sure your regulations match up with a comp plan. Here in Austin, we don't really have that choice. By charter, our land development code must be in alignment with our comprehensive plan. Public investment, we're looking at kind of our capital investment projects, capital improvement projects, excuse me. We're doing this with the city's capital planning office. It's a new office created a couple years ago with the purpose of coordinating all the citywide capital improvement projects and making sure they're in alignment with the new comp plan. And then partnerships. The vision that is laid out in Imagine Austin, it's way too much for the city to achieve by itself. So we really need to engage partners to help us achieve this vision. We're talking about county, school district, hospitals, nonprofits, and other organizations to help out with it.
What about us?
Yeah.
Carry on.
No, it's a great question. We actually get a lot of people that will come to us and say, "Hey, I read this part of the plan. I heard this part of the plan. I really love it. I really want to help out. What can I do?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's great." actually trying to figure out how they can actually help is something that's we're finding a little trickier to actually figure that out. So any ideas you have for helping us with that, we'd appreciate. Okay, so here's the priority program in Imagine Austin. We kicked off Imagine Austin in October 2009, and I remember at that kickoff meeting at the convention center, we had people coming up to us saying, you need to fix this in the code, you need to change this in the code, you need to revise this in the code. We heard comments on zoning and on the code at the beginning of the process to create the plan, in the middle, and at the end. These are the kind of comments people made about how to fix the code. That we wanted complete neighborhoods and expanded housing choices, protection of neighborhoods and the environment, household affordability, which we're defining with the help of our task force as your housing costs plus your transportation costs plus your utility cost. Efficient service delivery, providing city services in an efficient manner, and then a code that's user-friendly and provides clear guidance. In addition to Imagine Austin, the code itself, it's a mess. The last time the city looked at fixing it, revising it was in 1984. It's been amended numerous times over the years in kind of a piecemeal fashion with really no overarching vision for what we want to do or where we want to go as a city. George kind of touched on some of the complexities of it. Over 60 zoning districts, multiple overlay districts, and the review process is complicated and difficult to understand, and just the document itself is not user friendly. So what are we looking at that are on the table to revise? All the stuff that George talked about, the procedures for review and approval, zoning, subdivisions, site plans, drainage, transportation, environment, and signs. This is kind of the who we're going to do this. City Council, they're the ones that have ultimate authority and will vote on any changes to be adopted. Planning Commission by charter, they're the body that's in charge of recommending a new or revised code. We have an advisory group I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Kind of a staff team and then a consultant team as well. So here's the advisory group. We got these folks appointed pretty early in the process. They actually had their 7th meeting last night. 11 people, you see their names there. Kind of 2 main goals for them: to kind of assist with public outreach and to kind of help provide feedback on and development of the new revised code throughout the process. And there's actually, I saw 2, maybe 3 people here. I'll point them out. Jim Duncan. Come back, yeah. I want to say a lot about you. Dave Sullivan, is that him? And there was Jeff Jack. And was there one other? No, okay, so 3 of the 11 are here. Good thing there's not 6 here. So we'd have a quorum. But anyways, yeah, so usually we're meeting the 3rd Monday of every month, usually in City Hall at 4 o'clock on the 1st floor, staff bullpen.
Will you repeat that?
3rd Monday of the month, 4 p.m., usually meet in City Hall on the 1st floor. No, staff bullpen. Okay, so earlier this spring, the City Council selected a consultant team to kind of work on this project. It's Opticos Design. They're out of Berkeley, California, and this is their team of sub-consultants. A number of them have experience here in Austin. Friganese Associates, they're involved with the Mid-Central Texas, and also with kind of the South Shore analysis. Peter Park, he's actually a former planning director for both Milwaukee and Denver, and now is a consultant as well. McCann Adams, they do a lot of work in the city, in architecture, urban design, planning. Cultural Strategies and Group Solutions, those are 2 local outreach firms. Lisa Wise Consulting, she does zoning codes throughout the country. Eco Northwest, they're a firm out of Seattle that specializes in affordable housing. Taniguchi Architects, that's Evan Taniguchi. He was actually on the Imagine Austin Citizens Advisory Task Force and is a local architect. And then Urban Design Group, that's a local civil engineering firm here in town. Okay, so now how are we going to do this? We've got a four-step process, and I'll kind of talk about each one of the 4 steps in a little more detail. One thing to keep in mind with these 4 steps is kind of as we go through each one of these, there's kind of this whole iterative loop that we're going to go through in the process, whereas we go to the community, ask residents for input, the consultant team produces some sort of product, and we take that back out and we work it through residents, stakeholder groups, the advisory group, planning commission, and then city council is kind of getting authorization or kind of a notification to proceed to go on to the next step. So that'll happen in each one of these steps. So the first one, listening, understanding. This is where the advisory group, the staff, and the consultant team want to hear from residents and the community on the existing regulations, what works, what doesn't work, and help identify critical issues. Along with this, we're going to do some educational type events to kind of help people understand actually what the land development code is and kind of why it's important and why they should get involved. Step 2, code diagnosis and outline. This is where we do analysis of the actual regulations themselves, kind of an unemotional look at what our existing regulations say, and are they achieving what they're supposed to achieve. Again, that'll go through advisory group, staff, citizens, planning commission, and then city council. And again, with the outline, another way to look at that would be kind of an expanded table of contents. The outline will actually show, here's the sections of the code we're going to revise, here's the sections of the code we're going to leave alone, here's the sections of the code we need to talk about further as a community. And again, that outline will go through that iterative loop process. Step 3, this is where we actually write a new code or new sections of the code. It will be based on what we've heard from the process and based on that annotated outline. And then the actual adoption process. These are the formal public hearings at Planning Commission and City Council. Timeline, we're looking at about a 3-year process from start to finish. Starting this summer, actually really officially will start off next month in September with the listening sessions, which will be kind of the first of many opportunities to provide input. Second step, looking at from this summer to actually next summer, and then the actual code development process starting in August 2014, and then start the adoption process in October 2015. Just kind of a summary of what of the process. We're looking at kind of take a holistic look at the regulations and the review and approval processes. We've got to imagine Austin to provide a vision for what we want. The consultant team, they're the ones that will write all the products, they'll author all the products that come out of this process. And again, that iterative step-by-step kind of approval, authorization to proceed step with community, with the advisory group, planning commission, and city council. And then finally, planning commission recommends anything, and then city council, they're the ones that ultimately will approve any new code. So last summer when we were starting to talk about this with a little more detail, planning commission said, okay, this sounds great, but tell us if when you finish with this, what would success look like? So we went back and tried to figure out what that would look like. These are the things we came up with. The project should be on time and on budget. I think a lot of people take that for granted because the city is like, well, the city's got a lot of money. Well, it's really not true. We have a lot of constraints. Process is open to all. Engages people to use the code. It's respectful and fair. It's both informative and educational. There's a focus on common ground. We need to avoid assumptions. And then probably my personal favorite is not let perfection get in the way of improvement. Yeah, I think a lot of times we'll, as a community, we'll kind of grind through something. More meetings, more time, more data, trying to find this ultimate perfect solution to something that just really doesn't exist. I think there's a lot of room to improve the land development code. So make sure we don't let perfection get in the way of improving it. Here's everybody's contact information. I think this is also on y'all's agenda. So I kind of breezed through that. Kind of the next steps, upcoming events, the listening sessions. These are going to start the week of October 23rd. We don't have the locations and the dates. September, sorry, I said September. Apologies. Listening sessions start the week of September 23rd. And we'll get those dates and times and locations as soon as we have them. And then the week of October 14th, we're going to do the next one of our Imagine Austin speaker series. We're going to have four people from out of town come and talk to us about development review procedures. I think some of y'all came to the one we had in the springtime with cities that have recently revised their code. But for this one, we've got Teresa O'Donnell, former planning director for Dallas, Peter Park, former planning director, talked about him earlier, for Milwaukee and Denver, and also on the consultant team. Mark White is a consultant who does this around the country, and then Paul Zucker. He was a director, and now he's a consultant as well. So it should be pretty informative sessions that we're going to do the week of October 14th. So with that, I'll hand it over to Derek.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not used to talking with this because my voice carries. So, would you rather I not talk with this? Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. All right, hey everybody. Hey. All right, so I am here to talk about public engagement.
Yay!
And your name again, sir?
Derek Nicholas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Nicholas. So, I'm here to talk about public engagement. Now, you are all members of the public. Ergo vis-a-vis, this matters to you. Now, as Matt said, we're going to include the public in every step of this process. I know you really? Yes, really. So, as you see here, we're going to outline, this is how we're basing our principles. Accountability and transparency, fairness and respect, accessibility, predictability and consistency, creativity and community collaboration, and of course, responsible stewardship, which again is why we're talking to you guys right now. At the very bottom, you'll see the 4 key principles that we're going to do: inclusion, transparency, openness to learning, and multiculturalism. That, of course, goes beyond gender and race. It's basically people coming together, being able to share their experiences and their ideas, no matter what or who they are. All right? Now, up here are our methods. Yesterday at the Code Advisory Group, the consultants came and spoke to the group detailing our methods, the various ways we're going to keep the public informed. In-depth interviews, stakeholder interviews, listening sessions, as you can see. Again, this will happen from step 1 to step 4. The public will be involved. All right? And last, but certainly not least, how will we keep the public involved? Well, here you go. We're going to use our website. We're going to use social media. We're going to use traditional media, news releases, press releases, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to also have ambassadors, and those ambassadors will be out in public talking, getting people informed, and that sort of thing. We're going to give them toolkits to use. We're going to have a newsletter, and we're going to use Channel 6. I got to put them on. So, these are the various tools and platforms we're going to use to keep you guys informed. Again, every step of the process. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, the public will be involved. You'll be able to frame and give input on how this should work. Okay? Okay?
Okay.
All right. I need to hear. It needs to be two-way. It needs to be two-way. All right. So I think that's it. I know you guys are going to have your break at 7:15. We're a little behind, but I think that's it.
Pretty good.
But you woke us up.
There you go. That's what I do.
We let the new guy talk about all the fun and exciting stuff, right? Okay, for those who came in during the presentations, I'm Carol Gibbs. I'm one of 2 neighborhood advisors in the Planning and Development Review Department, and I'm kind of your host for this evening. Before I let y'all take your break to get your snacks and whatever, I want to remind you about the questions, the green sheets. If you want to ask whatever questions or say whatever you've written down on there, when we come back from break, hang on to them so that you can speak from that, and hopefully that'll help you kind of expedite your commentary. If you want your question addressed, but you don't want to ask it for some reason, then give it to Mary during the break, or get it to her during the next 45 minutes or whatever that we do the Q&A, and we will pose your question for you. Please, everybody, turn in your questions at the end of the evening, because the Land Development Code Committee of the Austin Neighborhoods Council is going to compile all of these questions and carry them forth through the process that Matt laid out that's ahead of us. So please don't take them home, or if you do take them home, leave another one. We've got extras around that we can keep or that ANC can keep for their records. Also wanted to remind you that there was one question about the advisory group meetings, and that information is on that website that's at the bottom of the agenda. So you can find out names and meeting times and sign up on the email list, because like last week they did change the meeting location at the last minute, and the only way you could have found out that was if you were on the email list. So if you are inclined to want to follow those meetings, I'd suggest you get on that email list. Mary is just itching to say something.
I am. I want to invite you all to take a 10-minute break, socialize, and we have some cookies, we have coffee, we have soft drinks and water, and some cheese cubes. So we will reconvene at 7:30, and we are 5 minutes behind schedule, even though we were 5 minutes ahead of schedule. But we'll do something about that.
And there's also a growth concept map over here on the table to my left, if anybody's wanting to see what that looks like. And I believe I saw Matt come in with an Imagine Austin book, if anybody hasn't seen one of those.